Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird. Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Episode 251, Ain't Never Had a Friend Like Me, Aladdin, and the Truth About the Djinn.
Ooh, the Djinn.
Yes. You know, before we get to that, though, I want to talk about the people that make our wishes come true. And those are the people who leave reviews on the iTunes page.
Yeah.
So who's the latest wish bringer?
Our personal genie today is Donna Lee 81.
Donna Lee 81.
Yeah. Who left this kind review on iTunes for us. It says, thank you. Glad I came across your podcast. Better late than never. I'm a huge fan of Patrick Keller's The Big Seance.
Ah, yes, Patrick.
And he recommended your podcast. I enjoy both your shows immensely. I not only gain information, but I also get to laugh out loud. Keep up the good work. I hope to meet you at a Paracon sometime. As Patrick would say, you rock.
Oh, well.
And that's awesome. And Patrick rocks.
He does rock. And I'm sure we will see him again in Alton next week.
Yeah, that's where we met him originally.
Yep, at the Haunted America Conference in Alton, Illinois, which is just outside of St. Louis, a site of some Civil War battles and things like that.
Yeah.
And really haunted as F.
Okay. But yeah, we had fun because his booth was right next to ours. So
right.
It was nice to have another podcaster nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you so much, Patrick, for recommending our podcast. And
Absolutely.
We also heartily recommend his podcast, which is The Big Seance.
It is a good podcast. It's really great to listen to after you listen to 251 episodes and see you on the other side.
It's great. He does a wonderful job, and it's a really, really well-produced program. And Donna Lee, thank you so much for taking the time to leave this review. And for listening to paranormal podcasts of all sorts.
Yeah, no, we need more people like you, Donnelly. So tell your friends. And everybody out there, tell your friends. If you leave a 5-star review and something nice on our iTunes, we will read it online for you.
Yeah.
And if you wanted us to read it in a special accent or anything like that, we'll do that too. Like you just have to say in the review, like, I want you to read this awesome review on the air. We will do it.
That's right. It's true. We will. And Donnelly, hopefully we will meet you at a Paracon. And there's a bunch of them coming up in the very near future.
Yes.
So we'll keep an eye out for you. But make sure you say hello at our booth if we are there.
Yes. All right. So number one, that was our wishes come true. And number two, the number one movie in America last weekend was Aladdin, which has Will Smith as the genie.
And it's the non-cartoon version. So
Right.
It's actual actors such as Will Smith.
Yes.
Which just seems so bizarre to me. Like I've seen some of the screenshots from it and it's like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he does a good job because Will Smith he's a talented actor and he's charming and all those things.
No, I don't doubt that he's excellent. I mean, he's one of my favorites of all time. But what I mean is that imagining it as actual humans as opposed to the cartoon that we were raised
Yes.
on.
But Disney's going back. And now they're reusing their intellectual property by
to make more money.
Going back, well, which is their job, to be honest.
That's true.
And so they're going back and they're going in and making live action versions of their cartoons.
Live action.
So they started with Beauty and the Beast, and it had like Rob Stark from Game of Thrones as Prince Charming and everything. And it was a huge hit. I mean, directed by Kenneth Branagh. So it was, like they pick like big directors to do these things. So like Kenneth Branagh does it. Kenneth Branagh, Academy Award nominated for his version of Henry V. He's done several Shakespearean adaptations. And in addition to the first Thor movie, which was a turd. Like I gotta say, like he did an okay job, but it was kind of like, but Kenneth Branagh, so they're doing this. And then Tim Burton just did a version of Dumbo.
What?
That was live action.
Oh, that's right. I did hear about that. But that seems even freakier. So much CG.
Right. Well, but Tim Burton, that's his kind of thing. I mean, because he did the Alice in Wonderland movies and he did everything. Okay. So Disney's been going back to the well and they've been bringing these live action versions of their cartoons coming out. And I haven't seen any of them because I don't really like any of those Disney cartoons. It's just,
didn't like them as cartoons, aren't going to like them.
Yeah, it's just not my
humans.
thing. So I tell you, probably the only other. I saw the Disney Robin Hood, the one with the foxes, Robin Hood. I saw that when I was a kid, when they did a re-release of that. And I saw that in the theater. And then I did not see another Disney movie in the theater again until Aladdin came out.
Wow.
When we were in high school.
Okay.
So when that came out, I was like, what? Because my girlfriend at the time was like, we should go see Aladdin. I love Disney movies. And I'm like, no way am I paying $5 a pop. This is when movies were not $15 a pop like there. And I was like, $5 for a date night movie, unless you could make it in before 5:30.
So stingy, Mike.
Hey, we were making $3.75 an hour at the time. So anyway, I'm like, give me a break. And then I saw that Robin Williams was going to be the genie. I'm like, all right.
Gotta go.
I do like Mork.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody loved Robin Williams. Like before he get to his cheesy phase, like in the late 90s or whatever, he was like, it was exciting to watch him and you loved him as a kid. Even though you didn't get half of his jokes or whatever, you still loved him as a kid. So you're like, okay, I'll go see it. And I thought it was great because of Robin Williams.
Wow. Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I was like, boy, this is a pretty good movie. And because Robin Williams, like they let him do whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
of course he was amazing.
And they wrote the character, you know, for him basically. But also, he agreed to take less money if they would not use him as a main part of the marketing.
Oh, interesting. Huh. I didn't know that.
And then Disney's like, whoever was the executive at the time was like, Robin Williams is the genie and we're not going to use him in the marketing.
Yeah, what?
Get out of town. So they just did, you know, because he agreed to be paid like scale or something ridiculous.
That's so funny.
And so he sued Disney.
Yeah.
And he ended up getting a significant portion of the profits.
So he made more in the end.
So he made more in the end.
By getting paid less.
Yeah, so it was a funny thing because he's like, oh yeah, I love the script and because I want to do a favor and stuff like that, I'll work cheaply, but don't make me the main guy in the marketing. And then of course every ad's like, Robin Williams as the genie.
I love how he's like, I do not want to be associated with a Disney cartoon. Like, please.
Well, because like if you saw a stand-up, it's filthy.
Right.
And Disney has a reputation for fiercely protecting their family-friendly identity. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I wasn't a Disney guy, you know, like it just all feels like soulless corporate entertainment.
No mouse ears for you.
No, I've been at Disney World and I get it, but I never was a fan of, like, I guess Mickey Mouse is all right, whatever, but like Donald Duck, people are like, don't you want to meet Donald Duck when you're like Disney World or whatever? You're like, no. Donald Duck's a jerk. Like, he's always in a bad mood. He's always complaining. Like, what little kid? Like, I saw a Donald Duck cartoon. I don't want to hang out with that guy.
You're thinking of Daffy Duck.
Daffy Duck is
Daffy's
also
the one that's...
He's a jerk, but he's funny. Like, he's like sarcastic.
I don't think Donald's always in a bad mood.
He's always in a bad mood. Always squawking.
I used to be able to do the Donald Duck.
You did?
I'm Donald Duck.
Hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Not very good.
Okay, I think
I'm out of practice.
I think it's great. So the thing is, Robin Williams and his character from Aladdin, I mean, kind of gave us our idea for a while of what it meant to be a genie.
Right? Very much.
And so did I Dream of Genie.
Yes.
Yeah. And
that bottle looked so cozy.
It did look cozy, and it's a it's got that jazzy 1960s theme, and Larry Hagman's so charming as a young astronaut.
Oh my gosh!
And Barbara Eden. I mean, I used to watch reruns. I'd be 8 years old, or whatever. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess I don't know. I'm not sure what a beautiful woman is, but that's it.
Yeah,
that is it.
Very pretty lady.
And so, of course, there's that story about I Dream of Genie, how the network censors at CBS never wanted her to show her belly button. Mm-hmm. So even though she was wearing a midriff T-shirt, like a 1960s Gwen Stefani, she always had to like pull up her pants or whatever,
the belt or whatever, like the
just
elastic
over her belly button, because they thought that navel gazing was just a little too hot,
so risque,
a little too hot for that home family audience. Okay, so those are our ideas. And if you guys haven't heard of a genie before, what they do is you rub a lamp. There's a spirit that comes out of a lamp and like a smoke, and then it grants you 3 wishes.
Yeah. But you can't wish for more wishes.
And that's always the thing.
That's a rule.
That's all. Because when I was a kid, I was like, well, duh, you just wish for as many wishes as you
Unlimited.
want. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're basically like, You can't wish for the genie to be your slave, pretty much.
Right. Unless she falls in love with you, like in I Dream of Jeannie.
That's true. You can just keep her in the bottle and you're...
Yeah, and just keep, like, you can just keep your love slave in the, right? So she called him master, too.
Right. Yeah, that was a little messed up.
So when you think about, like, the sexual politics of today, when you think about I Dream of Jeannie, it's like, there's this extremely powerful woman that I keep in a lamp in my room, and she calls me master. Oh, she loves me. It's fine. So, number one, the word genie comes from the Djinn, which is it's like an anglicized version of the word Djinn. You might have seen it spelled D-J-I-N-N or J-I-N-N. Like that pretty much doesn't matter because it's just anglicized versions of Arabic words. And also, they come from, even the Arabic words come from pre-Arabic, pre-Islamic words. Mm-hmm. And it's basically in the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad talks about like 3 different kinds of creatures that God created. Okay? So God starts out, he creates the angels, and the angels are made out of light. All right? And that's nice. Like angels made out of light.
Beautiful.
And they do God's bidding and they do nice things. They're messengers for God. He creates humans out of clay and earth.
Okay.
So we're dirt monsters, basically. And creates the Djinn out of smokeless fire.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah. And it was funny. I was listening to a podcast called like Expanded Perspectives about the Djinn when I was doing some research and different things about this episode. And one of the guys just completely without irony or forgetting what he's talking about goes, with these stories, when there's smoke, there's fire. And all I could say is, not always.
Yeah, exactly.
Not always, because they're made out of smokeless fire. Like he missed, like they did a whole setup there. And the other guy could have been like, not all the time. And anyway.
That's funny.
It's a pretty good episode, and they go into some encounters with the Djinn.
Okay.
And we're going to cover some of those encounters in this episode too.
Cool.
But this is part, they're mentioned right in the Quran. And the Djinn are made before humans. Okay? And so part of the idea is one of the Djinn, Iblis, okay? And this is almost like the story of Lucifer, and he's the top angel. He's the light bearer. Lucifer is the one that he's like all go for God. He's God's best buddy, and he is the lead angel. And then God says, you must bow before humans. Like I created humans with free will, and I did not create you with free will. And so he says that to Lucifer, and Lucifer's like, nope.
I don't think so.
Yeah, he's like, I am...
Dirt people? No.
Right, right. I am not going to bow to the talking monkeys. And that's it. So he's like, screw you guys. I'm going and making my own place in a much warmer climate.
Oh, man.
Okay.
He went for it.
So Iblis is much like Lucifer in that he's a Djinn that is not interested in bowing to humans.
Okay. Too good for us.
Yeah. So like humans, the Djinn have free will.
Oh.
So they are free to choose between good and evil. They have societies. They can breed. They can get married. So basically, Djinn live in a magical world alongside us.
Cool. And
sometimes they enter our world to mess with us. And that's the whole thing. So that's in the Quran, this idea that the Djinn are these creatures that can be good, they can be evil, and they have that choice. And they were also created by God. So, that's that's kind of where they come from in this idea. And that's why they're used in a whole bunch of Middle Eastern and Islamic folklore. And so the first time most people have heard about the Djinn comes from the 1001 Arabian Nights. All right? And so if you guys haven't read the 1001 Arabian Nights, let me go over that quick for you.
Please do.
All right. So it's a collection of different Middle Eastern folk tales that were collected and put together over a course of centuries.
Oh, wow.
And there's a frame story, and this was the frame story that supports like all the 1,000 stories inside it. And the frame story is you have this ruler, his name is Sharar, and this is like in the 7th century or something. This ruler, he finds out that his sister-in-law is cheating on his brother. And he's like, oh, man.
Not cool.
So he has her killed.
Oh.
And rulers can do that in the 8th century or whatever. And so he has her killed. And then he finds out that his wife is cheating on him even worse.
Oh, no.
Right? So the wife of the ruler, the queen, is taking a dip in the royal pool with whoever she wants to.
You'd think after the other family member situation that she might have been a little more careful.
Right. But then she's sleeping with double the dudes.
Oh, no.
And so he has her executed as well.
Okay.
And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to marry a virgin. And then I'll marry a virgin, and then she'll be my queen, and that's the only people I can trust. But then he goes crazy.
Oh, no.
And so he marries a virgin, and in the morning, he has paranoid fantasies that she cheated on with him in the night.
Oh, boy.
So he has her killed. And he keeps on doing this. He keeps on doing this. And his vizier, I never know how to say vizier, but it's his assistant, like his right-hand man. If this is the mafia, it would be his consigliere.
It's his Tyrion.
Yes, it's the hand of the king. Thank you, Andy. His vizier can no longer find any more virgins for him.
Wow.
He's like, oh, we ran out of virgins. Right, nice kingdom, buddy. So the vizier's daughter, Scheherazade, she offers herself as the next bride. She's like, I'll do it. And the vizier's like, no way.
Yeah, you're going to die.
Yeah, right? Like, this guy's crazy. He's killing women left and right. Don't do it. She's like, I want to do it. He's like, okay. So what happens is they get married. The night of their marriage, she starts to tell the king a tale. And then in the middle of it, she's like, but you'll have to hear the rest of it tomorrow.
Ooh.
And he's like, okay.
Very imaginative of her.
Okay, then. So the king is curious about how the story ends. And then he's like, I won't kill you tomorrow. And so the next night, she finishes the tale and then starts another one. And then once again leaves it on a cliffhanger. And so she does this for 1,001 nights.
Kind of surprised that he doesn't just say, tell me the end or I'm going to kill you.
Right. Well, I mean, it's fiction, obviously.
Oh.
So, yeah. Oh, really? And the thing is, the different kinds of characters that appear, I mean, there's love stories, there's tragedies, comedies, burlesque. Some of the stories are sexy. There's jinns, ghouls, apes, sorcerers, magicians. And like, it's 1,000 stories inside this book. And eventually it gets translated in the 18th century by a Frenchman, and he adds a whole bunch of stories to it that aren't originally in it. And one of those stories is Aladdin and his magic lamp.
Oh, wow.
So this French guy went to Syria, and he's like a French traveler and storyteller. His name is Antoine Galland. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you heard me right. Antoine Galland. And he goes to Syria, and he meets a guy named Yohanna Diab. And he meets Yohanna Diab, and this guy's a storyteller in Syria. And he says, you know what? I want to go treasure hunting and things like that in Syria. And if you take me to these various places down in the Middle East, I will take you back to France and we'll find you a place in the court of the French court.
Wow.
This is 1704. So this is before the French Revolution and off with their head and things like that. So the king's still around, and the 18th century is when the French kings were off.
Living large.
They were living large. And even, this Diab, the Syrian guy, he eventually makes it to the French court, and he finds out that Antoine completely exaggerated his positions of power and stuff.
Man.
But he did get to hang around in Versailles.
That's a sweet place to hang out.
Right. And Versailles is thought to be his the influence on what would eventually become the Magic Garden in the story of Aladdin. So Diab adds these stories to the Arabian Nights that Galland is collecting and translates into French. It makes a European version of these Middle Eastern stories. And Diab kind of bases some of the stories on his own life and places he's been in and things like that. So this idea of Aladdin, the initial story, first of all, takes place in China.
Oh, wow.
Not the Middle East.
Okay.
And even, there's plenty of Muslims in China. So there's that whole middle of China, that's more Middle Eastern than it is necessarily of what we think of as Asian.
Mm-hmm.
But so the story starts out with somewhere in China, And you're like, all right, then. That's like, I didn't expect
It's a good
that
start.
one. Because we think of it as the Disney version, right? When you think of Aladdin, you think of he's going to be, and there's going to, like, those buildings with Hershey's Kisses on top and stuff
Nice,
like that is what we think of it. No, but and in the original story, what happens is a sorcerer hires Aladdin to go into this cave and retrieve a lamp for him. And he doesn't tell him why. And so what happened, he gives Aladdin a ring.
Drugs.
Right. He wants to smoke whatever
sketchy.
from the lamp. It is. It's the kind of thing. Like he's treating Aladdin like his drug mule.
Right. Totally. Just
Okay.
don't ask any questions. I'll give you lots of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, I'm gonna make your family rich. Is what he says. Because Aladdin's not an orphan in the original story. It's not like he's some orphan boy that steals things. That kind of gets added on at a different time.
Yeah, it makes it more interesting.
Because treating Aladdin as a street urchin
Yeah.
makes him more when he eventually becomes the Sultan.
It's a higher climb for him.
Yes, it's the rags to riches story, that idea. Plus, when you're telling that story to poor people, it's that it's that idea of like we're smarter than the rich people, or we can be more clever, we can be tricky, and things like that. So it's that, and people love a story like that. They love the trickiness and the cleverness of the common man overcoming people.
Definitely. Yeah. It's a hero.
Yeah. And so the sorcerer hires Aladdin. Aladdin goes into the cave. He makes him with the magic ring. And then he like rubs the ring and a little genie pops out. The Djinn pops out. And this is just a little Djinn. And he's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so the genie says, because you freed me from the ring, I will let you go back to your mother and take this lamp with you. And he's like, all right.
That's huge.
Right. And the thing is, because the sorcerer sent Aladdin in there because the cave was full of traps.
What a jerk.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. Like
I know.
he's like, I am not going to do it, so I will send this boy. And so he sends the boy, and then he makes it out. Aladdin gets home. The genie just pops him back home. And that's the genie in the ring. And then his mother's cleaning the lamp. And there, bingo, the big genie pops out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's the one who's granting wishes and things like that.
Cool.
And Aladdin ends up becoming rich and powerful because of the genie, marries the princess, the daughter of the Sultan. And then they have like the sorcerer hears about it and he comes back, and that's why they have the,
Sure.
with what happens in Aladdin.
Yeah.
But this idea that the genie is your buddy, like the genie is your friend. That's not really what happens with the
He's
story.
your little buddy that you own.
Yeah, right. He's Barbara Eden in the lamp waiting for you anytime.
Right.
So this idea that the genie comes, really the stories of the genie granting wishes, it's always like the monkey's paw.
Ah, okay.
And so if you guys haven't read the monkey's paw, first of all, after this podcast is done,
Do it.
It's free. Go look it up. But it's the idea of this object grants wishes, and it will grant the wishes, but not in the way that you think it's going to grant them.
Yeah.
And so that is the Djinn. The Djinn is often like a trickster spirit, like the African legends have Anansi. Trickster spirits are huge in Native American legends.
It's always too good to be true.
Yeah. Oh, well, these lessons have stories in them.
Yeah.
In that, except for Aladdin. Like Aladdin's story ends up fine, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's not part of the original Arabian Nights, and it's not part of the original folklore. It's the one this guy made.
Sanitized Disney version.
Completely sanitized. Because this idea that wealth, riches, love, and everything just comes to you because it's being granted as a wish.
Yeah.
Right. The lesson is it always comes with a caveat.
Right.
You'll make $100,000, but it's because your aunt died.
Yeah, yeah.
And she left you $100,000.
And now it's basically your fault.
Right. So there's lessons in there. And those are part of the original stories. It's funny, though, because the Djinn, even in the Arabian Nights, they serve as the trickster spirits. There's a good story about the fisherman and the genie. And in this one, the fisherman's out to sea, and he pulls up a bottle instead of catching a halibut or whatever. I don't know what kind of fish they have in the Middle East, but I'd assume that a halibut is not one of them.
I don't know.
So he's fishing the elusive Persian sea halibut.
Okay.
And then it gets a bottle instead. So he opens up the bottle and out pops a genie.
Ah.
And the genie says to him, he's like, I've been imprisoned here for hundreds of years. For the first 100 years, whoever would free me, I would grant them wishes. For the second 100 years, whoever freed me, I would thank them profusely. For the next 100 years after that, I would give them a choice of deaths.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
that's nasty.
So this genie's like, now I'm going to kill you. Because he's bitter and angry because he's been stuck in the bottle for so long. And then the fisherman, he's like, oh, okay. Hey, you know what? How'd you get in that bottle? He's like, you're such a big, massive creature.
Yeah.
How'd you fit in that tiny little bottle? And the genie will take the chance to show off. Like he won't resist it. And he's like, yeah, I'll show you how I got in the bottle. And then he gets back in the bottle and gets trapped again.
Nice.
And the fisherman's like, what's up,
That's way too easy, though.
Yeah. And so then he's like, I'll let you out again, but this time you have to grant me wishes. And then the genie does.
That's surprising.
Yes.
Because being a trickster, you'd think he'd be like, yeah, I'll totally grant your wishes.
Right. But that's the story. So that's
It's not as good of a story if he pops on, then he
gets some wishes, right?
That's
and
fair.
Right, because then it's like, you can never beat the genie then. You can be the most clever guy in the world and never beat the genie. So, I mean, the Djinn basically become an explanation for, all these different things in Arabic folklore. And so people can get possessed by the Djinn, much like they, in Christian theology, we think of getting possessed by demons.
Yeah.
In fact, possession is a big thing that happens in the United Kingdom now because they have so many Middle Eastern immigrants that they're seeing Djinn possession cases in people from Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Middle East, and North Africa. And it's often just like when people get possessed by demons.
Wow.
They're screaming, they're talking in weird languages. What happens is, like, the imam has to come over, so that the holy man, the Islamic holy man has to come over, do a bunch of prayers and things. And so it's almost the exact same as an exorcism. It's just, instead of saying the power of Christ compels you, they say that you have to, like, Allah demands you exit the body. And they'll ask the Djinn, like, sometimes why they're in the body.
Yeah.
Some Djinn fall in love with humans.
Aww.
And so that's the thing. They possess humans because they fall in love with them.
Oh, wow.
So unlike the devil tries to, like, swallow your soul or whatever,
right,
and send you to hell.
The devil wants you out. Like,
the Djinn just wants to be with you.
Huh.
But that doesn't mean it's good for you.
Okay.
Right? So it still eats away at part of your soul.
Yeah.
It's because humans and Djinn, I mean, there's stories of humans that get married to Djinn, like, it's part of the folklore too. So they can copulate and do the whole thing.
The human probably doesn't know it's a Djinn? Or what's
Well, they do think something's a little off because Djinn are shapeshifters.
Yeah.
So they can shift into any kind of form and things like that. I mean, they often fall in love with people in some stories. That's even in American Gods.
Oh, yeah.
A Djinn falls in love with a guy, and
yeah, that.
Right. And so I'm looking at questions here, and there's questions on the internet where it's people who are actually concerned about the mental health of people who are possessed by the Djinn. There's a very interesting medical article about the psychology of people getting possessed. A 25-year-old woman from Iraq with no previous psychiatric history gradually withdraws from other people, becomes uncommunicative, and stops eating and drinking. She's got no disease and no severe depressive illness. She goes through electroconvulsive therapy. Still nothing happens. Her family thinks that she's possessed by the Djinn, but they don't want to tell the doctors because they fear the doctors are going to think they're superstitious. Yeah. Of which anybody would.
Right. Yeah.
So they take her, like, to the local imam, and he says he'll treat her in the traditional Islamic way. After a few sessions of prayers, she starts eating and drinking again, and then she gets better. So the exorcism works.
Wow.
A woman of 35 experiences episodes of high fever and confusion during which her speech becomes incomprehensible. A local general practitioner diagnosed typhoid fever, gives her antibiotics. Her family, though, thinks that she's possessed by the Djinn, so she doesn't take the antibiotics. She goes to the imam. He does the condition in the traditional Islamic way, and then she starts to have epileptic seizures. And this one, it didn't work. The traditional stuff didn't work, and then they found out that she had cerebral malaria.
Oh, wow, it's terrible.
So in that one, science won out. But there's several cases like that where, people have done research into this kind of possession and said like, okay, well, maybe some things are Djinn.
Sure.
Maybe, or a psychological placebo effect. And, some things are just epilepsy, things like that. So, but I'm looking at the questions on the internet, and there's people asking straight up, how do you know if a Djinn is in love with you? Like they're worried about being possessed. And this is on Quora. And this girl answers, and she's like, well, I can tell you like how to not attract a Djinn. So the fact that she knows how to not attract a Djinn interests me.
I was just going to ask what her credentials were for answering that.
Well, she says she's seen and had her fair share of different relationships. I don't know if that's a school I'd trust a doctor from. But here's some of her recommendations. Don't wear strong perfume at night, especially around trees.
Okay.
Don't wear your hair down, especially around trees. Well, I mean, that's also an Islamic thing, the covering of the hair. And that's why the women wear the burqas and things like that. Don't sing. Hear that, Wendy? No singing or a male Djinn's coming for you.
I didn't hear what you said, Mike.
Oh my God, he's behind you. Don't recite anything that sounds beautiful, especially around the tree. Don't loiter in places you think a Djinn would be. Now, there's an old superstition that you're not supposed to be the first one to the market or the last one home from the market.
Kind of like going to a party.
It is. This to me almost just sounds like social advice.
It really does.
It says don't be the first one to the market because Djinn like to hide in the shadows between light and dark, and they like the transitional periods and things. And so the marketplace is one of the places that they like going. Because, I mean,
who doesn't?
Some Djinn love being around humans. Don't go out uncovered at night. That just sounds like social control for women. Like, don't, make sure.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, if I told my wife, like, hey, you shouldn't go around those guys. And if you do, I want you to wear a beekeeper suit.
Yeah, it should be covered head to toe.
Yeah. But the thing is, straight up, people believe in the Djinn, just like they believe in fairies, just like they believe in aliens and things like that, because it's prescribed in religion. People talk about demons like it's real.
Or angels.
And this is the exact same kind of thing. If your religious text says that God created the Djinn, well, that's what you tend to believe. Now, there's a whole bunch of kinds of Djinn. So it's kind of like there's a whole bunch of kinds of angels and a whole bunch of kinds of demons. I feel like once these things are introduced, religious people, especially when we go back to like the 9th century, the 8th century, the Middle Ages, anytime without television, anytime you got plenty of time to do stuff, like hierarchies get made, different kinds of things, like there's different colors of Djinn, blue Djinn, it's yellow Djinn.
Makes for good fire pit talking.
It does. It's arguing about how many angels can dance around the head of the pin.
Yeah.
And that's something that we enjoy in this show.
Yeah.
But when we talk about what people really believed, we're just reading old writings and things like this. So they might really believe that there are Djinn, because Djinn love to throw rocks. They say Djinn love to live in certain like abandoned cities. Ghost towns are where Djinn like to go to.
Ooh.
You remember Indiana Jones' The Last Crusade?
Yeah.
So at the end of it, they go into that valley, and they have those beautiful statues and everything. Mm-hmm. That's the lost city of Petra, and it's a real city in Jordan. And so those beautiful statues that they were going through, those are real. Those weren't just Hollywood magic,
nice.
Whatever. And so they're going through the lost city of Petra. That's one of the places that the Djinn are supposed to inhabit. Mm-hmm. There's a lost city in Saudi Arabia that's just being reopened now for tourism, and Saudi Arabia is trying to open it up for tourism.
You better look out.
Bingo, because people have said that for years that's a place where the Djinn live.
Oh, it makes sense, Have your own space. You don't have to be
right, but
surrounded by those pesky humans.
But that's the warning, though, is like be careful about opening this, because now you're opening it up to the world of the Djinn, and you're opening tourists up to like take attachments home.
It's like going to the Haunted Museum, Mike.
Right, it is like going to the Haunted Museum. But soldiers have come back from the Middle East. After the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan, and they've brought stuff back with them, and had encounters.
Oy.
So, like, they bring back souvenirs.
Oh, okay.
And wartime souvenirs is a long tradition.
Yeah.
Like, I think everybody's grandfather or whatever that fought in the Second World War, like, nicked something from, like, a German
Nice.
or whatever. Or, like, oh, I brought this, like a Luger back. I mean, that's when you could fly with guns or whatever.
Right.
And so they bring back a German gun, or they'll bring
Like
back...
a pocket knife or something like that.
Yeah, something from... like a souvenir wand from their enemy. And it's not any different today when the soldiers come back from Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they bring back a trinket, they bring back little statues. They bring back little icons like Pazuzu in The Exorcist. And it's funny because we were talking about Pazuzu in the episode with the nun, because he is one of the demons listed in the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is a grimoire from the Middle Ages of demons that you could contact to do your bidding in the name of God. So you can still be Christian and get demons to do things for you.
We wrote a song called that.
Right, the Lesser Key of Solomon. So the reason I want to mention that is that because jinn are neither good or evil, as Islam spread across the continent, it could assume the gods and the deities of the people they were conquering and could bring them in to the jinn. Just like Christianity would change like the local gods into devils and things like that. Or if you get a place like voodoo where they would say, okay, let's now mix the local god with a saint.
Yeah, or the pagan.
Right.
Same thing.
So then these people could become jinn. And in fact, in the Quran, they talk about how Solomon, when he was building the temple in Jerusalem, they didn't say that he was using demons to build the temple. They said he was using the jinn to build the temple. And so, like, he had a personal slave army of jinn build the temple because God gave him a special jinn controlling ring.
Nice.
And, what's interesting was this was actually a kind of funny apocryphal story. So one of the stories is after Solomon died, the jinn were supposed to be freed, like his slave group of jinn, whatever that they had control over. But he had a staff, and he died while he was holding his staff, and the staff supported him and held him up. So because he didn't fall down, because he was still standing, the jinn still thought he was alive and that he was still in charge of it. So God had to send a worm down to eat away at the staff till eventually Solomon would fall over. They'd realize he's dead, and then they could get on with their jinn lives.
Yeah.
Because, jinn have their own hierarchy. They have their own groups, just like the idea of demons or the idea of, like the devil and all the circles of hell and all those kind of things. So some of the different groups of jinn. Number one, you got the shaitan, and they're the evil ones.
Okay.
Like those are the malevolent jinn. Like they want bad things to happen to us. There's the Afrit, and the Afrit are death spirits drawn to blood. And so they're particularly drawn to blood of like murder victims.
Oh.
Yeah. So, they inhabit the underworld or desolated places on the surface, such as caves. They have like flames leaping from their mouth. They can be dangerous to people, obviously with flames, and obviously because they're angry creatures.
Yeah.
And they're angry because they thrive on the blood of murdered people.
Wow.
There's those kinds of jinn. There's the ghouls. So that's where we get the term ghoul from.
Ah, okay.
So ghoul and ghoul might not be jinn in origin because they're before Islam. The idea of the ghoul, of a spirit around a graveyard that consumes dead bodies. So they eat human flesh, and then they can take on the appearance of that person that they ate.
Oh my gosh, that's creepy.
So when you think of our idea of the modern zombie in horror fiction,
yeah,
that was one of the original names of Night of the Living Dead. It was Night of the Flesh Eaters, Night of the Ghouls. So, eventually the ghouls get assimilated by this idea of the spirit of the graveyard that eats on flesh, takes its appearance, and hangs around there looking for more flesh to eat. They get turned into, they're a kind of jinn. So, they're a spirit that becomes a kind of jinn. And they don't get introduced into European society until, our idea of the ghoul is another one from the Arabian Nights. So these 1001 Arabian Nights, really, that is kind of the Western idea of, if it's like, why does the Middle East always seem like the other? Why does it seem so mysterious, so far away? It's because our best idea of it is from an 18th century fiction work translated and bastardized by a Frenchman. Some of the other various types of jinn there are, the Djinn are shapeshifters who live in the desert, and they can take the forms of whirlwinds. So they come through like a big sandstorm and things.
Like a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, like a Tasmanian devil. And they can reveal oases to humans if they like you.
Oh, that's nice.
So there is like a desert spirit that's ambivalent about humans. Like they could like you. They also could, just
honey badger.
Let you die. Yeah, honey badger don't care. The Marid is a large and powerful jinn. That's the one in the fisherman and the Djinn. That's the Marid, the powerful one, angry, but also can grant wishes. So that's one of the powerful ones. I think my favorite is the police. Now this one's a pretty dumb Djinn. So this is like their little lower level kind of like the. Well, the reason we think he's dumb is because basically he survives by sucking your blood through your feet.
That's really gross.
So while you're sleeping, so you're sleeping in the desert. While you're sleeping in the desert, he comes in, licks your feet, and like sucks your blood. I mean, I don't know.
Why does that make him dumb?
It just says it's a low intelligence Djinn. So it
seems kind of clever to me.
Because he waits till you're sleeping, or just
and he just like it's just your toe, so you're probably like.
You just think you're being tickled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or those ghosts that always mess with people's toes.
Yeah, or. Aren't that like that's one of the Icelandic like Christmas monsters too? I think
oh, nice.
Like he's a toe licker, like he licks your feet. But the way that you can fool the police is that the police.
I was just gonna say, Mike,
the palace police. I mean, I'm not an Arabic speaker, so I'm doing my best here. It can be fooled by two people sleeping end to end with the soles of their feet together.
That sounds uncomfortable.
Yeah. So then you're like,
can't move.
How's it gonna work? Or if you put like your foot under their pillow, is the way. You fool them. So I'm not sure if that's just a way to sleep more comfortably in the desert or something like that, like where that legend would come from.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially the end to end, because you'd have to have a really long tent.
Right. How big's your tent got to be to fool that little guy?
Thin tent.
So there's these various type of jinn that that exist in folklore, and it almost seems like every kind of fairy type creature.
Or like paranormal phenomenon, even because they're shapeshifters. So pretty much could be anything.
They could be anything. And that's, when you talk about the lost city of Petra, and that's where the Djinn live, one of the things that the Djinn do is they throw rocks at you. So rocks seem to be thrown at you from out of nowhere. Well, that sounds like a poltergeist.
Right. There's a lot of ghost stories with
rocks being thrown out of nowhere. So, in a society that doesn't necessarily believe in ghosts, like when we talk about Abrahamic religions, this idea of Judgment Day. So all our bodies are in the ground and our souls don't come out of it till Judgment Day. That means that ghosts aren't supposed to exist because your spirit is waiting for God to call you up.
Yeah.
So any ghost walking around then has to be a different kind of creature. Because it can't be your deceased relative, because your deceased relative is not going to get up, because that's what it says in the in the text. So you can have this other race of beings that live in a different dimension that can be responsible for everything. And it just the throwing rocks thing made me think like, oh yeah, well they're just Middle Eastern fairies.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call them that to their face. But who went whole hog on this? A few years ago was Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Yeah, we saw her presentation on the Djinn.
Yeah, and she basically said, you know how like Giorgio Tsoukalis from Ancient Aliens, like the meme says, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Yeah.
Rosemary, we should have had a meme of her saying, I'm not saying it's Djinn.
But it's Djinn.
But it's Djinn.
Yeah, I think it was like an hour-long presentation, and when she just went through and slide after slide after slide of
Djinn.
Here's an example. And to me, it was just every form of high strangeness we've ever heard of.
Shadow people, Djinn, Bigfoot,
which kind
Djinn,
of is,
Djinn.
it's kind of a bummer. Like just
Kardashians, Djinn.
Here, I've got the solution. It's the answer to everything.
Right. And it does, the thing is, it does provide a almost unified theory because they're shapeshifters, because they can do, because they're mentioned in ancient texts, because they pre-exist.
Right.
Even Islamic culture, this idea. But spirits have always been part of the culture, and otherworldly creatures and things like that, and shapeshifters and tricksters have always been part of the culture too.
Yeah.
I almost kind of think though that Rosemary's. She's not on the Djinn kick anymore. Like she's retreated.
She's going after a different spirit. No.
Right. Like Djinn
Tequila.
Hey, I'll take that spirit any day. Or Zozo, like she was on for a while too.
Yeah. Well, she digs deep into these things for her research for books. And so it's depending on when you see her presentation, you'll get to learn so much. And that was the one that I happened to catch, which was neat because I hadn't really known much about the Djinn at all at that time. No,
I really just thought it was just another thing like demons or something. Like, oh yeah, well, it's a religious thing and people talk about it. But this idea that, when you have a weird experience, it's the Djinn messing with you.
Right.
And you got to be careful about what you do. Make sure you say your prayers and things like that. And it really is the same as Christians worried about demons and things like that.
Yeah.
But, people believe in the Djinn. So there's a podcaster named Ahmed Ali Akbar. He's working for BuzzFeed. And he hosts a podcast called See Something, Say Something.
Oh, okay.
And it's about being a Muslim in America.
Cool.
And near Halloween or whatever, he puts out a call for stories from the Djinn to different Muslims that live in the United States. And we talked before about Muslims that were living in England and they were experiencing Djinn possession and things.
Wow.
People came back with just, stories on Facebook and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So here's just a couple. One time, my mother-in-law was sitting in her bed. She looked over and saw a woman sitting in the chair next to her bed with long, pointy fingers and a face with very sharp angles. She was so frustrated and annoyed with the Djinns, they see a lot in their house and are no longer afraid, just annoyed by them, that she reached out and grabbed the Djinn by its wrist. She yelled, "Get out, I'm tired of you, get out." It started to try to pull its wrist away and eventually tried to bite her hand because she wouldn't let go. She pulled her hand away before it bit her, and then the Djinn vanished. That's Sakina Blue on Facebook. What I love about these things is that there are stories on Facebook, and Facebook has to be at least associated with an email address.
Yeah, it's not anonymous.
Yeah, so these people are like, they're actual people with friends, and that's click on
they're putting it out there.
They click on interested in events and things like that, and they're saying like, yeah, my mom saw a Djinn. At my boarding school, we had a few cases of bullying. In one instance, a bully broke a chain on a student's neck. As soon as that happened, the girl started to speak in a male voice while her body contorted into strange positions. It said it was a Djinn and had traveled from a faraway place. Meanwhile, the bully's tongue swelled and almost prevented her from breathing. Long story short, teachers were called into the room. Apparently, her parents knew and had gotten the chain for their daughter from a shaman to hold the Djinn in. Tematopi Barakat Lawal, also on Facebook. And so there's just a whole bunch of different stories that Americans have about the Djinn. So it's almost like when we talk about American gods and how the gods from the old world are trying to get into the new. It feels like they're bringing over the Djinn.
Yeah.
But the thing is that that first story where the mom grabs the Djinn's hand.
Yeah.
That could be a ghost, right?
But usually with ghosts, there isn't a physical. You couldn't grab their hand,
Right.
At least the way that most stories go.
And it seems that a lot of different kind of people, you never know who's going to encounter a Djinn. Hank Wesselman is a PhD. He's a research paleoanthropologist, and he's gone all over the Middle East. He's from the United States. He's from New York. He served in the Peace Corps in the 1960s. He lived in Nigeria for a couple of years and got his PhD and has been studying anthropological stuff around the world. And he said that in 2010, he was in Egypt and he walks into a temple of Medinat Habu near the Valley of the Kings. And it was a mortuary temple, so it's a place where people were buried. And he returns there and he all of a sudden gets what he calls, quote, "This dialogue did not occur in English nor in Arabic, but rather in the nonverbal communication modality that I conceive of as think feeling."
That's the way that aliens communicate with us.
Right.
In some stories.
Right. That's it. That they're talking to us in there.
Yeah.
So like this whole thing, like when really, when Rosemary Ellen Guiley was like, aliens are the Djinn, shadow people are the Djinn, everybody's the Djinn, I'm like, get out of town. And now I see that where she was going with this whole thing.
Definitely.
He said that during this encounter, the Djinn manifested itself first as 2 disembodied eyeballs. I love that.
That's awesome.
He said, this did not deter me. And then it carefully chose to reveal itself as a smoky humanoid that flickered at the edges, shifting back and forth from one vague shape to another in pastel hues of orange, yellows, and greens, with deeper core areas of more brilliant light as its mood shifted in response to its dialogue. And he has a whole conversation with the Djinn, and I will link to it in the show notes, but it's this he writes it out like a question and answer, like a Q&A with the Djinn. He's like, is there anything you want? And it thinks for a while, and it says, honey. Which is funny because I was listening to this one podcast, and the History Goes Bump podcast. They interview a girl who's had her own encounters with what she says is the Djinn, and her family members and friends have had encounters with the Djinn. And one of the friends says that when the Djinn will sometimes try to talk to him in his dreams, and one time it wanted him to bake it an apple pie.
That's awesome.
See, the
simple requests.
They have a preference for sweet things.
Yeah, I can relate.
Right. I'm a hungry guy too. And, when he's talking to the Djinn, this is back to Dr. Wesselman, he'll say like, are you guys the ones that we call aliens or extraterrestrials? And he said the Djinn says the deceivers can take on many forms, drawing from the belief systems of humans. And there are also visitors who come here from other places. And this guy's like, other worlds? And the guy's like, yeah. So the thing is, if you think Djinn are just genies, it's way more than that.
Think again.
Yeah, it's way more than that. And so, I always knew there was a rich history because I'd read a lot of the stories of the Arabian. I wasn't able to make it through 1001. Because halfway through, I'm like, you might as well just kill her.
Oh no, Mike.
But I knew there was a rich history of folklore that we had no idea about. It didn't grow up with it because it's from a different culture. But it's really cool to see the similarities, like when we talk about the fairies of Europe, and then poltergeists in our modern ghost hunts, and then the Djinn of the Middle East. We kind of see the similarities here, so that we made fun of Rosemary Ellen Guiley a lot because it just sounded outrageous calling everything the Djinn, because it was like, I'm not saying that ghosts are aliens, but ghosts are aliens, kind of thing.
Well, it felt a little like, we were at a paranormal conference, and it was just kind of like the mic drop. Like, yeah, okay.
It's Djinn.
Here we go, everybody. But
right.
No, she wasn't saying that. She was saying like, they could take this form. They could take that form. And then proceeded to list pretty much every paranormal phenomenon out there. So...
but I think that quote that say like, what you think is strange is stranger than you think kind of goes to, because this idea.
That's a John Tenney, right?
Yeah. Because, yes, the idea just of the Djinn, of this other race living along beside us that comes in and screws with us every once in a while, we're almost giving them human tendencies.
Yeah. And they can appear as humans.
Right.
So it makes it so easy to...
But we anthropomorphize them like we do with Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck. I can't do it. You do it. One more time.
Wait, that was bad. Hold on.
I'm Donald Duck. That's great. That is good. Like
horrible.
Like we anthropomorphize Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. We're also anthropomorphizing these creatures who we have no idea what they want.
Yeah.
Or these experiences that we have absolutely no explanation for. So they must be this crazy group of people that lives alongside humans.
Well, I mean, it also gives it a form that we can use to communicate with other humans, to explain to try to explain what we're experiencing.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And it's really interesting how, Christian mythology, when it picks up on the demons and devils of all the pagan denominations of Europe, now Islam did the exact same thing as they cut their way through the Middle East. They take you over and they're like, all right, we're going to take your local legend
This will make it easier. And we're going to make it less painful.
Yep, and we're going to make him a Djinn. And that's how it goes. So it's just... There's so many similarities that you realize that even though the Middle East does feel like to me at least, because I have had so little experience with it, it does feel like the great other, like it's completely...
Very foreign.
And we even had that in the Iraq War, there was a whole problem of the U.S. military did not have enough Arabic speakers. So they were hiring any Arabic speakers they could find because there weren't enough Arabic speakers to be effective in the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan. And so, and then when you think that European culture has been fighting Middle Eastern culture since the First Crusade, you just realize that it's a millennial-long clash of civilizations, but they're not really that different.
Yeah.
Because we still have the same. We got fairies, they got Djinn. We got demons, they got Djinn. And anyway, it's cool about that. So Aladdin is not fact, just to let you know, and it's not even real Arabic folklore. It was basically through the lens of a Frenchman.
But next time rocks come flying at you from nowhere, just think Will Smith is probably throwing them somewhere.
He's like, welcome to Earth.
Woo!
That's right. Speaking of Aladdin, we decided to take the second greatest song from Aladdin, because the greatest song is Friend Like Me, obviously. But, like Robin Williams, he didn't sing that at the Academy Awards when it was nominated. Nell Carter sang that.
Oh, wow.
From Give Me a Break.
Yeah.
And I thought she did a great job, too.
All right.
So Nell Carter's been dead for 20 years.
It was memorable, apparently.
Yes, it's memorable, because I'm like, Nell Carter, all right.
She remembered she did a good job.
Yeah. So A Friend Like Me is the best song, but the second best song is A Whole New World. So let's take you guys to a whole new world.
I can show you the world, shining, shimmering, and splendid. Tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide? I can open your eyes, take you wonder by wonder, over, sideways, and under on a magic carpet ride. A whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. No one to tell us no, or where to go, or that we're only dreaming. Don't you dare close your eyes.
A dazzling place I never knew. But when I'm way up here, it's crystal clear. And now I'm in a whole new world with you. Unbelievable sights, indescribable feeling, soaring, tumbling, freewheeling through an endless diamond sky. A whole new world.
Hold your breath, it gets better.
100,000 things to see. I'm like a shooting star. I've come so far. I can't go back to where I used to be. Every turn a surprise.
With new horizons to
Every moment's red
pursue,
letter.
I'll chase them anywhere. There's time to spare. Let me share this whole new world with you. I'll chase them anywhere. There's time to spare. Let me share this whole new world with you.
Let me share this whole new world with you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
All right, and if you still like us,
We hope you do.
make sure to check out our Patreon community. That's OthersidePodcast.com/donate. What do we like to do with our Patreons?
We love, love, love chatting with them, hearing about their own paranormal experiences, getting ideas from them for show topics and people they want us to talk to, and areas where we should research more.
That's right. And we'd like to do that with you. Now, if you check out our Patreon at othersidepodcast.com/donate, you can see a whole bunch of different options. But the highest option is the one where you get a shout out in every single episode.
Yeah,
And
like our friend Ned.
Dr. Ned, thank you, my man, for making See You on the Other Side podcast possible. And to all of our Patreons, thank you so much for your donations. They pay for the hosting. They help pay for the email service. They help pay for our microphones.
Yeah, and also recording studio time for
the songs
making
you
better
put in.
versions of the songs.
Yeah. So every little thing makes the show better, and you guys make it so it's a lot of extra fun.
And we really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
And if you're interested, if you're not a Patreon member already and you're interested in joining, just check out othersidepodcast.com/donate. He's always in a bad mood, always squawking.